This episode is brought to you by Choiceology, an original podcast from Charles Schwab. Hosted by Katie Milkman, an award-winning behavioral scientist and author of the best-selling book How to Change, Choiceology is a show about the psychology and economics behind our decisions. Hear true stories from Nobel laureates, authors, athletes, and more about why we do the things we do. Listen to Choiceology at schwab.com/podcast or wherever you listen.
Hey there, How To listeners. Before we start the show, I want to let you know about a story coming up a little later. It's from one of our partners, As Seen on EV. Did you know that most EV models can travel 200 miles on a fully charged battery, with some up to 500 miles when fully charged? You can charge them at home or at thousands of DC fast chargers nationwide. And how about this? EVs produce zero tailpipe emissions. Talk about living more sustainably. Head to SeenOnEV.com to learn more, and stick around to hear from people who love their EVs.
It kind of sounds like you're somebody who's been enjoying playing the cello for 15 years, a few hours a week, but is upset that you're not Yo-Yo Ma. And you have no reason to be Yo-Yo Ma because he's a professional.
Yeah, I know.
Welcome to How To. I'm Carvel Wallace. Cooking. It's one of the most basic human activities. We've probably been doing it since the discovery of fire. And yet, it's still something that we obsess over, like constantly think about, and now we even make content out of it. When I was in high school, I had this humanities teacher that said the thing that separates humans from animals is that we take food, clothing, and shelter, and we turn them into these things with a capital T. Like we're trying to seek a balance between fueling ourselves on the one hand and the culture, comfort, ego-stroking, belonging, and maybe even frivolity we find in food on the other. But here's the thing. When you have such high expectations for something so simple and vital, you can find yourself, well, paralyzed with doubt, not to mention hungry.
What I struggle with the most is battling my lack of technical skill. I think I'm a pretty good home cook, but sometimes I wish I was better at this. Not just so I can eat a better product, but also just it's empowering to feel like you're great at something, and especially something you do every day.
That's Rachel Barron. She's a food writer and someone who fell in love with cooking as a kid.
Eating is responsible for many of my strongest memories. My mom cooked, and she put a lot of love into her food, but it wasn't something that she saw as an art or a hobby or a passion. I kind of taught myself. I was starting to read Anthony Bourdain's books and watching him travel, and just, I would watch Ina Garten and I would see how food can be better, something more.
She started trying out recipes on family and friends when she was in college. Overall, it was a positive experience. They were happy to be served well-prepared and elaborate dishes, but she would find herself nitpicking her execution. She didn't think it was good enough. To her, a great cook is one who has a specific set of skills.
Expansive understanding of food science and how flavors come together, and, incredible knife cuts, and their technical knowledge of how to fix a broken sauce, for example, or, why is my sourdough not rising? I think that is sort of how I would describe it.
You mentioned memories, and I've been thinking about that ever since you said it.
Yeah.
If you were to close your eyes and think about a time in which you were cooking in the kitchen and you just felt like, yeah, this is it. This is the spot.
I think it's probably when somebody comes to eat who isn't a big cook. And so a recipe that I've made a few times is Marcella Hazan's bolognese sauce. It was also during the pandemic, and this was kind of when it was a little bit more safe to invite people over. But I remember my friend came over, and, I had spent all day. I had done all the prep. She was just, really impressed, and it came out amazing. It just reminded me of how nice it was to come together with people, after such a long drought.
To me, that's how cooking should make us feel. Empowered, proud, full of good food, obviously, but also maybe full of love from the people that we share the table with. So today, I brought in a friend who has helped so many people find love at the table.
Hi, my name is Samin Nosrat, and I'm a writer, a teacher, and a cook.
Samin is the author of Salt, Fat, Acid, Heat, and the host of a TV show of the same name. She's one of the most well-known cooks of our generation. But one of the things I adore about her style is that it's so approachable and rooted in love. Love for the art, love for function, love for tradition and community, love for the self.
Rachel, I don't know you. I've never watched you cook or eaten anything you've cooked, but I already know you're a better cook than you think you are.
On today's show, we're going to recalibrate our expectations in the kitchen by embracing the chaos of cooking. And hopefully, we'll learn how to nourish ourselves along the way. So put the kettle on and stay a while. We'll be right back.
This podcast is brought to you by Slate Studios and As Seen on EV. Electric vehicles offer so much more than a way to get you from point A to point B. Just ask any real EV owner.
The EV that I drive, I love the dependability and range.
The rebate, I got $7,500 back.
Since driving an EV, I've found that I've really looked forward to any reason for getting in my car.
A lot of friends have driven my car and loved how it drives. I think when you get into one and drive it, the ease and the fun, it speaks for itself, honestly.
I care about sustainability a lot, and it gives me peace of mind knowing that driving a car with zero tailpipe emissions means that I'm doing my own small part.
What I love about owning an EV is never having to go to a gas station. It's smooth and quiet.
I can charge my EV while continuing to live my life.
I actually feel good and happy when I get into my EV.
From SUVs to hatchbacks to trucks, there's an EV that's right for just about any lifestyle. Electric vehicles are worth watching, so head to SeenOnEV.com to learn more. That's SeenOnEV.com.
It's time to reboot your credit card with Apple Card. Apple Card is a different kind of credit card. It gives you up to 3% unlimited cash back on everything you buy. It's real cash that never expires or loses value. And you can use it on anything. Grab a morning coffee, pick up a tab, or pay back a friend. Apply now in the Wallet app on iPhone and start using it right away. Apple Card issued by Goldman Sachs Bank USA, Salt Lake City branch. Subject to credit approval. Daily cash is available via Apple Cash Card, issued by Green Dot Bank, member FDIC, or as a statement credit. Terms apply.
For those of you unfamiliar with Samin Nosrat, she started her culinary journey when she was an English major at UC Berkeley. One night, she had a meal at Chez Panisse, which is this famous restaurant started by Alice Waters, known for pioneering the farm-to-table movement. Even though Samin had no prior culinary aspirations, one meal there and she knew this was where she belonged. So she got a job bussing tables and eventually worked her way into the kitchen as a chef. She's gone on to cook in other restaurants in California and Italy, but as she's gained fame, what it means to be a cook has evolved as much as she has.
When I first started cooking in 99, 2000, most of my peers, the people around me were like, why would you want to cook? Because the idea of being a cook was really just for like kind of uneducated riffraff. I don't know. Like it was not a, there was not like something fancy or fabulous about it. But certainly over the last 25 years, that's totally changed. It's gotten a total makeover. It's got a marketing facelift.
Oh, yes.
And that is really complicated when also cooking and eating is something that everybody does every day. And so then this message has been sent to everyone that what you do at home should look like what these people do at work.
Honestly, that's a good place to start because home cooks are not professional chefs. Sure, expand your horizons if you'd like, improve your skills, but the goal can't be influencer-style, Michelin star-worthy dishes. Otherwise, you'll always feel like you're failing.
I think you've just been brainwashed by Instagram or whatever. And I'm not saying that with any judgment because I also am brainwashed by Instagram. And like I constantly am hard on myself about the thing, whatever it is that I'm cooking. And right now I'm making a book about the stuff that I actually cook at home. And I every day have to basically give myself a pep talk that it's okay that I'm not one of those internet cooks, that I'm not one of those people who makes a meal for myself and for the people around me that has, you know, a main part, 2 vegetables, and a condiment. Because I don't eat that way. I eat rice cooker rice, right, toaster oven broccoli, and some chili crisp that I either bought or made. And 3 times a year, or maybe a few times more, I'll do a huge project. But on the day-to-day basis, man, I eat a lot of peanut butter sandwiches, a lot of quesadillas, a lot of like super simple chopped salad. Like, I'm not out here cooking that stuff. I'm not saying, you know, these things to you. I only recognize it because I also, it's happened to me too. So first thing is like, please just be a little bit nicer to yourself because you're better than you think you are.
It makes me wonder if like part of the issue is that food making has gone collectively, culturally, from something we do to nourish and love to something we do to acquire and feel like we're matching kind of the capitalist sort of like, I am this valuable person because I have this great kitchen and I know all this food science. I'm 48 years old, and I remember a point at which I noticed all the dudes around me were like kind of cooking douches all of a sudden.
Same.
And I couldn't figure out how they became that. And they'd be like, oh, bro, is that how you do your cast iron? No, dude, you're supposed to. Like, and they had all these like, all this sort of, it was like, it was the same as the music douche or the computer douche or the comic book douche. And I remember that was a real turn in the early 2000s. But like back in the day, you had Julia Child, who I'm sure was heavily influential, and a lot of people were at home trying to match that vibe or, you know, whatever. And I'm wondering, Samin, if you feel like, this way of using cooking in America as a way to like show achievement status has always been there, or is that kind of like something that's really blown up over the past few years?
I definitely think the beginning of it was the Food Network, and then the internet sort of exponentially sped it up. And then social media sort of brought it into this thing that turned it into a competition. Because before the Food Network, really the only thing we had was PBS, right? So, and nothing about PBS is really like that aspirational or sexy. You know, like it's very much like you just are trying to learn from it or watch it. It's Ann Can Cook and Julia and all that kind of stuff. And it's like you're saying, yeah, I'm sure some people were comparing themselves. But I think always Julia Child's sort of message was don't stress out too much and here are some things you can learn and let's all do this together. And so there was just so much more flashiness once there was a 24/7 channel and then the internet. And then once I think social media, then you felt pressure to have something that you could post yourself. The whole entire thing is making you feel like you're not enough and you don't have enough innately and essentially, so that you have to buy something, be it an ingredient, a book, a tool, a whatever, so that you can make this thing and show everybody how good you are. You know, almost everything I cook lately, I've been like, wow, this is so beautiful and so nice and so simple. I should take a picture of it and post it. And then I'm like, nah. Like, and it's... I just have a thing where I'm like, it's just for me. Like, I can't bring myself to do it. Partly because I also know I'm that for people. So I'm like, I don't want to do that to anyone. Yeah. So.
Right. Like even if you don't want to be, you represent something that some other person is like, oh, I'm not as good as Samin.
Yeah. I don't know. It's a really complicated thing.
Samin, because I've listened to you talk to Rishi about this so much, and I've read so much of your writing. I gotta say, like, you talking about your simple meals, about the Annie's mac and cheese dinners and the cheese puffs, that actually has empowered me. I think my food in the last year has been so much more of that. Like, I feel like this is a very basic thing right now because tinned fish is like full on. Like there's nothing surprising about that, but like, God, I mean, like, I really do like the, like, really thick slice of, like, you know, crusty bread from, like, a local bakery with, like, excessive amounts of, like, salted butter and, like, you know, a few sardines on there with, like, a little bit of lemon juice. And I also made Kenji Lopez Alt's 3-ingredient stovetop mac and cheese, too.
I was just looking at that recipe recently.
Oh, it is really good.
Yeah.
I made it last night, actually. And also, last week, I didn't know what else to do to prepare, so I made your Ligurian focaccia for the first time.
Oh, awesome.
So I've been having some sardines on your focaccia.
Oh, that's fantastic.
I love that. Last night I made a box of Annie's mac and cheese, and I didn't use the cheese sauce, but because it was the only noodles I had in the house.
Okay.
So I made those, and then I basically just tossed them with like effectively a tuna salad. Like if I'm keeping it 100, like
That sounds so good.
Yeah.
I used this sweet soy sauce, which I'm super into now, and then I did like a can of corn and some garbanzo beans, celery, salt, pepper. Spun that around and then just put the pasta in that, and that's what I had for dinner. I just ate it out of the bowl in front of like TV, and it was like one of the best meals I've had in a long time.
So I've been eating a lot of meals out of big steel, like prep bowls, and like I used to not be able. I had to plate it for myself, and then I was like, what is this nonsense? Like,
Rachel wasn't always this relaxed in the kitchen. There was a time when throwing things together willy-nilly would have been difficult for her. She recently wrote about this in the Washington Post. Quote, "As someone living with chronic anxiety, I used to be so fearful of creating something inedible and then having to literally eat my failure that the thought of so much as swapping in light brown sugar for dark would push me to nearly break down before I'd even begun making my cookie dough. With time and practice and plenty of therapy, I eventually started to ease up on myself. Life, I've learned, is chaotic. Occasional failure is inevitable. Why stress yourself out by fighting it?" And that's when she discovered chaos cooking.
I was reading this post by Ethany Lee. It was called Chaotic Pavlova. It's kind of like a huge meringue that is crisp on the outside and soft and gooey on the inside. She used things like butterfly pea extract to give it this vibrant blue color. And it was kind of a mess.
A beautiful one, though. If you haven't seen these pavlovas, look them up. Yes, there's chaotic colors like blues and greens and purples, but overall the desserts are giving way more whimsy than mistake. But Rachel wasn't only drawn to the bright colors, she also resonated with how Ethany talked about mental health.
She feels chaotic, like emotionally and physically. And I related to that like so much. Like I've been living with chronic anxiety my entire life. Sometimes it is paralyzing, and some days I want to eat something insane, like a crazy amount of butter, or like double, triple portion of like pasta or whatever.
Put simply, chaos cooking is really just cooking beyond boundaries. Like the recipe calls for Parmesan in that potato dish. Okay, but you only have cheddar. Use that. And then what would happen if you squeezed a little lime on it and maybe a hint of maple syrup? Maybe it's good, or maybe next time you make it and you go more spicy than sweet. Chaos cooking is more about learning your own tastes than it is about memorizing steps. And to be fair, most of us are already doing that. I mean, those of us who are older may have already learned to cook entirely that way. But with the prevalence of cooking influencers and food media, it's becoming harder and harder for people to feel comfortable just vibing in the kitchen.
Sometimes chaos is really painful and we don't have any control over where it goes. And so how can we take chaos and make it into something that feels good to eat and is beautiful, even if it's kind of a train wreck?
Yeah, chaos is like the word du jour. It's like the word of the year. And the reason it fits is because it describes so many things that we're experiencing.
Right.
The politically, it's been chaotic. Climate is chaotic. It's chaotic.
Yeah.
And so it feels to me similar to eating out of the prep bowl. It's like we need to behave in a way that we feel is aligned with how the world is going. And we just went through this crazy pandemic. We're still going through it, but where we've separated ourselves from one another, and everyone's spending a lot more time alone and at home. And why would you plate? Why would you put on hard pants? Why would you
hard pants?
Stiff pants. So in some ways, like it feels like what we're doing is we're working to make our cooking match up with the way things feel.
Right.
Which feels right to me. Samin, I'm wondering what you see in that connection between like the way the world has changed and the way we prioritize ourselves differently, and how that's showing up in the way we're dealing with food.
That's interesting. I mean, it just sort of brought up this image of what it was like to cook in spring and summer of 2020, when you couldn't just go to the store and get whatever you needed. And so there was a lot more sort of like, well, I guess I'm going to have to put this in here. And yes, there was a lot more improvisation. There was a lot more, I'm just going to have to be okay with what I have. I had a CSA, which historically I've not like loved CSA boxes because I want to choose my produce, but I kind of found it this like meditation for me to be like, okay, I'm going to work my way through. I'm going to use every single thing. And it became a challenge to like figure out how I'm going to use up every rutabaga. It was a different kind of a chaos. And so I think those two things are really connected.
All right, it's time for a quick snack break. I'll see you back here in a second.
This podcast is brought to you by Progressive Insurance. Most of you listening right now are probably multitasking. You're maybe driving, cleaning, exercising, or maybe even grocery shopping. But if you're not in some kind of moving vehicle, there's something else you could be doing right now. Getting an auto quote from Progressive Insurance. It's easy and you could save money by doing it right from your phone. Drivers who save by switching to Progressive save nearly $700 on average, and auto customers qualify for an average of 7 discounts. Multitask right now. Quote your car insurance at Progressive.com to join the over 29 million drivers who trust Progressive. Progressive Casualty Insurance Company and Affiliates. National average 12-month savings of $698 by new customers surveyed who saved with Progressive between June 2021 and May 2022. Potential savings will vary. Discounts not available in all states and situations.
This episode is brought to you by Choiceology, an original podcast from Charles Schwab. Choiceology is a show all about the psychology and economics behind our decisions. Each episode shares the latest research in behavioral science and dives into questions like, can we learn to make smarter decisions? Or what is the power of negative thinking? The show is hosted by Katie Milkman. She's an award-winning behavioral scientist, professor at the Wharton School, and author of the best-selling book, How to Change. In each episode, Katie talks to authors, athletes, Nobel laureates, and more about why we make irrational choices and how we can make better ones. Choiceology is out now. Listen and subscribe at schwab.com/podcast or find it wherever you listen. So, a few years ago, I started working on a new book. And sort of the anxiety of trying to work on that book would overwhelm me, and it would take me like half an hour or 45 minutes just to calm down. And someone said I should try Headspace. Headspace helps improve mental health through guided meditations, mindfulness practices, breathing and calming exercises, with customized, personalized approaches to help you navigate through all of life's moments, big and small. Headspace has helped more than 100 million people worldwide, and they can help you too. Listen up, you do not want to miss this. For a limited time, all of you can try Headspace free for 30 days by going to headspace.com/how230. You won't find this offer anywhere else. Use the link headspace.com/how230 to unlock all of Headspace for free for 30 days. This is not something they normally do. Headspace.com/how230.
We're back with food writer Rachel Barron and chef extraordinaire Samin Nosrat, who were talking about how to find peace in the kitchen.
I just read Lulu Miller's really beautiful science memoir, Why Fish Don't Exist, which is all about her sort of, I don't know, she was just striving to find order in the world. In a chaotic world. Surprise, she doesn't. And there's this line at the end that's so beautiful that I have just been sort of replaying in my mind for the last couple of weeks. And so when I read your piece, I went and got the book and I like underlined it because I was like, oh, I want to read it to you, because I think there's something in it that kind of speaks to the idea of what is it that we're seeking in cooking in this way. She says, the longer we examine our world, the stranger it proves to be. When I give up the fish, which is her search for order, when I give up the fish, I get at long last that thing I had been searching for. a mantra, a trick, a prescription for hope. I get the promise that there are good things in store, not because I deserve them, not because I worked for them, but because they are as much a part of chaos as destruction and loss. Life, the flip side of death, growth of rot. So it's just like,
Wow.
yeah, of course, like chaos is messy, but also in that mess, there's beauty. Like, you know, chaos is everything. And, you know, when you throw everything up and it lands down, sometimes the way it lands is going to be beautiful. Like, you know, we have to let go of this like striving for order and perfection because it's only going to make life so miserable.
Thank you so much for reading that to me. That was another encouragement. I recently had a permalance gig or like anchor freelance gig that felt somewhat full-time, and it was the first time I had like really like it felt like a stable, you know, office gig, and I was laid off recently due to budget cuts, and so that structure completely disappeared. And so I think that was also like this chaos has been flung upon me. I kind of have to just, you know, accept it and like let it in and just, you know, not drive myself crazy. So
probably at our core level, we're always struggling with what we can and can't control. That's probably the biggest human like bummer that we have is like, what stuff can I be in charge of and what stuff can I not? And how do I know the difference? And how do I sort of like exert force where I can and let go where I can? So you can look at cooking as like, everything in my life is chaos. The world is falling apart, but I made these pancakes absolutely perfectly because I followed the recipe to a T. You know, like I put exactly the right amount of baking soda. Yeah. That gives me some feeling of control in a world that's topsy-turvy. Or on the other hand, cooking could be a reminder that things can be beautiful even if you don't control them. Yeah. And I think baking is a little different. That's why I don't bake, because I like things to be a little chaotic. Yeah. But I'm wondering if you have ever had that experience, either one of you, where you have had the satisfaction of having something happen beautiful in the kitchen, specifically because you couldn't control it. Not in spite of it, but specifically because of it.
Ooh, oh, that's interesting. I know it happens all the time, but for me, I think just what you were saying, Carvel, rings really true. My dad died last year, and I had a really complicated relationship with him. So it was just a really complicated thing. But I think watching anyone close to you die is just is kind of a reminder, a helpful reminder that your own life is not indefinite. And so I think for me, I've had this renewed sort of sense of like, oh wait, like I have, like you only live once, you know. I'm just like, oh, you only live once. Yeah. And like, do I really want to spend all of my time beating myself up? Because honestly, most of my unhappiness is from beating myself up and being really hard on myself. That's like almost all of the like why I'm having a hard time in life is I'm mean to myself. And so if I can just figure out a way to be a little bit less mean to myself every day, maybe things will be a little bit less horrible. I've been reading all these books and listening to all these podcasts, and like kind of the essence of everything that I'm interested in, not only right now since my dad's death, but over the last few years, is kind of answering the question or discussing the question of like, what is a good life? And almost anyone wise or anyone who I want to listen to, it seems like their answer is kind of like a variation of the same thing, you know, like, which is, you know, being very aware and tuned into the world and like being present in the moment, being present with the people around you. Cooking is such a vibrant, alive, sensory and sensual thing. And so it's not something that I can control at all.
Samin, how do you like prep yourself to go in the kitchen? I remember like when I grew up, cooking in my family is like pretty serious, especially for holidays. My mother was the youngest of 19 children, right?
Oh, wow.
So, cooking for holidays was this really big thing. And I remember one time I made a joke to a friend of mine that like before I cook for Thanksgiving, I pray before I step into the kitchen, just to like let the ancestors come work through me as I like prepare this mac and cheese or these greens or work on this turkey. And my friend, I just said that as a joke, but she's been quoting that to me for like years. She's like, "Are you going to pray before you go into the kitchen?" And I've been thinking about why is she so obsessed with that? And part of it is, shout out Yeshi, and part of it is because it feels to me like we do have to put ourselves in a certain state in order to like be free and focused and present, but also not like it's almost like a little bit of a spiritual thing. And I'm wondering, Samin, how you get yourself into the state to like go into the kitchen.
Yeah, I mean, I think I wish I had like a candle lighting. I wish I had an actual. Maybe I need to invent like a little ritual, but it is the closest thing that I have to like a yoga practice or something like that, which is it's the time in my day when I'm out of my head and in my body. So I'm, I like smell the herbs. I touch the lettuces. I really do my best to become sort of fully in my body as I sort of leave my desk, leave my headspace and enter my body space. Being present with your whole body is how you're a good cook because you have to smell and you have to look and you have to touch and taste. I try really hard to pay attention to my desires. What do I want? You ask people like, what do you feel like eating? But I think that it's like a kind of a dual question. It's like, what do you feel like? The feel is also like, what do you feel like? Like, what kind of feelings are you having? Because I think feelings show up in the cooking too. And so that's not that far apart from what you were talking about, Rachel, when you're saying like, oh, when you're feeling really anxious, you're like, I want to eat a huge stick of butter. Yeah, me too. Like,
yes.
Just a stick of butter. Yeah, literally.
Yeah. Rachel, how is all this woo-woo talk landing for you? We're both very Bay Area.
I'm sitting in Brooklyn. This is not
Well, I spend way too much time in my head, considering all the anxiety I have and all the therapy I do.
I'm very neurotic and anxious. I go to a lot of therapy too.
Woo-hoo.
So that's not so different.
Virtual high five. Yeah. Food has become lower stakes for me. I used to see food as kind of like, I'm like, oh, the world is sucks, and so everything I eat has to be perfect. And now food is something I can relax, and it's not something I'm as obsessed with anymore. I'm still really, really passionate about it, and eating it, writing about it. But it's something that is just sort of seamlessly blended with other elements of my life, and I feel like that is working for me.
I guess I want to like offer that we can reframe good cooking as cooking that makes you happy.
Yep.
Instead of cooking that's done perfectly. And sometimes doing things well can result in things that make you happy. But sometimes it's just doing what makes you happy, period, point blank.
Yeah.
Samin, I know that this is a big question, so forgive me if it's just too broad. But like people go into the kitchen and they're like, where do I start? And I wonder like what advice you have for people who are like, I don't even know where to begin when I walk into the kitchen. I just get overwhelmed by the existence of everything.
If you have that experience of going into the kitchen and you're like, I don't even know what to make, take stock of a few things. There's not one answer that I can give you of, the best thing to make is pasta with butter, because I don't know anything about you or your circumstances. So I think first you kind of want to like take a minute and see like, what do I feel like? What am I craving? It sounds like probably a person who's asking that kind of question maybe is a little bit intimidated with their skill level. And so we don't want to, start with a recipe that's like super complicated and has, many different steps or involves the stove and the oven or something like that. So I would say choose carefully, choose something, simple, choose something when you're sifting through in the New York Times cooking app or in a cookbook, choose something that's specifically like easy or 30 minutes or less or something like that. I myself make a lot of quesadillas. I myself make a lot of grilled cheese sandwiches. I make a lot of toast. I make a lot of, one thing I make a lot of that I really have grown really fond of over the last couple of years is that same sort of crusty bread that Rachel was talking about from the like local bakery. I really have grown like super into cutting a thick slice of it and frying it instead of toasting it in the oven.
Right.
I fry it in olive oil. Ooh. If you have a cast iron pan, I would put that pan over medium heat, wait for it to warm up, add like a thin layer of olive oil, which is probably like 2 tablespoons, and then put the toast down. It's nice if it's maybe a day stale, but it doesn't have to be. And then you kind of just like leave it there. You don't need to move it around a whole bunch. Let it start browning and it'll start sizzling. And if it gets, if you start seeing smoke or it's, or it's like you're hearing like a lot of really fast sizzles, it's probably too hot. And then you can start turning it, not flipping it, but just turning it and looking and seeing how brown it is. So you can make sure it's browning evenly. And I like it pretty golden brown. And then I'll flip it and do the same thing on the other side. And if the pan needs a little more oil, add a little more oil. And then I have this kind of beautiful golden fried bread that you can take a clove of garlic and swipe it with garlic.
Oh, yeah.
And then the like simplest stuff that I like to put on there is either like fresh mozzarella or burrata or honestly, probably my favorite ingredient that I never really have been without for the last 3 or 4 years is ricotta, just like regular ricotta.
Yeah.
And so I'll just put like a little salt and pepper in ricotta and smear ricotta on garlic and fried bread. And it's so joyful. Yeah. And then if it's summertime, I'll put a tomato in there. And other times of year, I'll put sauteed greens on there. You know, you could put some chili crisp on there. Right. But it's a good breakfast. It's a good lunch. It's a good dinner. It's just a really delicious treat. Yeah, fried bread. I love it.
You were describing the making of toast, and the radio host in me was like, this is so basic. We're just describing how to make. How long are we going to talk about toast? And then I realized, oh, wait a second. What's happening is you're describing being present with your food. That it's not just like, make some toast and then put some thing on it. It's like, here's how you sit with the toast and pay attention to it and determine when it's time to turn it over. And and so there's something about it that like is very much about the time we take with things. Yeah. And I remember I actually wrote a piece about this. A friend of mine who's Armenian was making this herb sauce that her grandparents used to make. And she was picking every single leaf off the herb, and it was taking forever. And I was sitting there watching her, and I was going, dude, she was telling us this story about when she went back to Armenia and visited the village her family's from, but she was taking like forever to pick every leaf off the herb. And I was like, just chop the herbs, let's go. And then I was like, why am I in such a hurry? Because we're literally on vacation. And it dawned on me that like, yes, the thing that we do with cooking is that we don't, I think the acquisition mindset is like, we need to quickly do this thing so we can do something bigger. Yeah. Whereas actually like there's this other mindset that I'm observing, which is that we need to do this thing slower so that we can do it better.
Feels a bit anti-capitalist.
Feels a little anti-capitalist.
In a good way.
In a good way.
I'm saying that with a smile.
You know, if I had that moment to do over again, the one you just heard, what I would have said is that we think we have to get the cooking over so we can do something bigger, but that actually the cooking itself can be something bigger. It reminds me of this quote I heard recently. The person who loves walking goes much farther than the person who loves the destination. And I know as a former single dad that the demands of life can make you feel like I don't have time to enjoy cooking. We have homework and soccer practice and bedtime. But my experience was that it didn't actually take me longer to pay attention while cooking. It just made everything feel calmer and more spacious. And it made the food taste better. Oh, and here's a little tip that can go a long way. Like Samin and Rachel's toast creations, it's easy to nail the basics and then accessorize. Play with the toppings. You can get a wide variety just by doing that.
I have been on a journey not so different than yours, just like I think the professionals version of it, where, in the first like 6 or 8 years of my career, I was obsessed with technique and everything being perfect. And one of my best friends and I would like go out to eat. We almost had a sport. We had sport eating where we would save our money and go out to eat at all the sort of like fanciest and best restaurants. And then we would just sort of like criticize everything. And because we were sort of just trying to figure out what is everything, what's it made out of, how did they do it, how would we do it, would we do it better, would we do it differently? And then, but we were kind of killing the joy. There was no joy in it anymore. It was not fun. It was not fun to eat in a restaurant because we were just obsessing over how everybody was working. And it was not fun to be near us. It was not fun. It was just like, it was horrible. It was a horrible person. Yeah. It was a horrible way to be, and it was horrible to be around us. And
Yeah.
And I had to sort of reset myself and realize this is not who I want to be in the world. And this is not also what I want my experience of eating to be. And this is not ultimately what food is about for me. Because food, ultimately, like, you could just give me, I don't know, pretty bad cafeteria, you know, like elementary school cafeteria pizza. And if I'm sitting there at a table with a whole bunch of kids and we're like having a great time, that was a great meal. Like, that's the thing I'm going to remember is the funny conversation I had with a whole bunch of third graders, right? Like, not the pizza. I don't care about the pizza. And so I think, sure, I'm going to attempt always to make something nice, but I'm not going out to eat or bringing food over to a whole bunch of restaurant critics. They're not grading me every time. I have to stop grading me every time.
We're coming to the end here, but I'm curious to hear from each of you. Honestly, what do you think you're going to cook next? What's the next thing you're going to make?
I have some Trader Joe's cascatelli, and then I have some kale. And so maybe I'll do something with the cascatelli and the kale and some anchovies and, I don't know, chili flakes, Parmesan.
Yeah.
Classic.
The classics.
Yeah.
I love it.
Yeah.
Samin, what about you? What do you think the next thing you're going to cook?
I have some brown rice in my rice cooker from yesterday.
Uh-huh.
I might fry an egg. I don't know. Like, I'm so hungry. I need to go down. I probably will, like, as soon as we got off, just go eat.
Yeah.
Like an egg and fried rice.
Yeah. Same. I think I'm going to do one of my go-tos, which is like this tempeh thing. You crumble the tempeh, you fry it, and then on one side, and a little bit of oil. Sometimes I'll mix sesame and olive oil, which I don't know if you're supposed to do, but I like it. And then I'll sort of turn all of it over when it's brown on one side. Then I'll salt it, and then I'll mix up a little sauce that's like lime juice, soy sauce, maple syrup, and whatever spicy thing. It might be sriracha, it might be some kind of like other sambal or whatever. And I just mix all that together and then cook the tempeh in that. And I make it super greasy and salty, and it's
good.
So good. It's so good.
It sounds so good.
Yeah. Ultimately, it's nice to remember that the point of cooking is to nourish ourselves. And it's hard to do that if you're stressed out about making everything perfect. So my hope for you, and for all of us, is that we can be grateful for whatever little food we have, that we can find just a few minutes to be present in the kitchen when we're cooking it, that we can take a few basics like bread, rice, or potatoes and experiment with how to add to them, and that we can sit down and appreciate the person we share food with, especially if that person is you. I just want to offer a sincere thank you to Rachel and Samin for being here and for talking about our challenges in the kitchen. We'll link to Salt, Fat, Acid, Heat and to Rachel's Chaos Cooking article in the show notes. And we want to hear from you. What is your go-to meal in the midst of all the chaos, the comfort food that helps you find peace in the kitchen? Leave us a voicemail at 646-495-4001 and we'll play it in a future episode. You can also send us a note at howto@slate.com for any other problems you need us to cook up a solution for. And if you like what you heard today, do us a favor and tell just one other person to check out our show. That's how we can keep helping new people. How To's executive producer is Derek John. Rosemary Belson and Kevin Bendis produced this episode. Merritt Jacob is senior technical director. Charles Duhigg created the show. Amanda Ripley is my co-host. And I'm Carvo Wallace. Thanks for listening.
Hey everybody, it's Tim Heidecker. You know me, Tim and Eric, Bridesmaids, and Fantastic Four. I'd like to personally invite you to listen to Office Hours Live with me and my co-hosts, DJ Doug Pound.
Hello.
And Vic Berger.
Howdy.
Every week we bring you laughs, fun, games, and lots of other surprises. It's live. We take your Zoom calls.
Music.
We love having fun. Excuse me?
Songs. Vic said something.
Music. Songs.
Music.
I like having fun. I like to laugh. I like to meet people who can make me laugh. Please subscribe now.